going to start off with the consequences of the consultation and any changes that
Can we have some hush, please?
There's going to be two issues basically that we're discussing. First, we're going to have the consultation and any changes that have been made in consequence of the consultation. So there'll be a presentation and discussion on that, and then on landscaping and trees. And if I can just quickly come back to landscaping and trees, a number of us walked up and down Milton Road with the landscape architect recently, and that was a really valuable exercise to walk the whole length with the landscape architect. And then earlier than that, a group of us went out with the trees people from the city and looked at trees of various types in their locations, and we had wonderful feedback from the City Council trees people to tell us what trees were appropriate in which space. So we thank the trees people and we thank the people that are going to make the presentations this evening. So let's go ahead. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Jocelyn. So I'll kick off. Thanks all for coming. So this will be a kind of workshop style event. So the presentation is going to be quite short. And then we're going to split everyone up onto probably 4 tables, maybe 5 tables. I think a few extra people have turned up. And then I want to spend the majority of the time having that table discussion, recording things on the sheets that are provided so that we can then take the ideas that come out of the workshop and apply them to the scheme. So in terms of the consultation that took place, I've just got a quick slide here. I haven't got the full consultation analysis document yet from our research team at the County Council. They're still working on that. So we've had to kind of do a rough analysis of all the results, me and the consultants. So it's taken a while to read through all the comments that were put forward. The events that we held were really useful. Had lots of good discussions with people. Got quite a few ideas actually just from the events themselves. The slide sets out that we put the consultation brochures out to about 15,000 houses. We had 870 completed consultation responses, and maybe surprisingly to everyone, all of the questions that we put forward gained more support than against. And in most cases in the Milton Road consultation, all the questions received significant support from those 870 returns. So that was quite positive. There are, however, some issues that were raised during the consultation events, and also if you look more detailed at some of the comments that were provided, you can start to pick out some of the issues that people set out. So we're trying to address all of those issues now in this phase of design, so that we can present to the board a kind of a design that's as final as we can get it before we move into the detailed design phase. So in the meantime, so before this event, we've had a meeting with kind of the wider officer group. So that includes people from Signals. Richard Ling is here from Signals tonight, so he can help with the workshop. Also with cycling officers, and we've got Claire Rankin from the cycling team, who's going to help with the workshop in terms of cycling. So if you move forward, Olivia. That just sets out what I've just said. So again, move forward to the next slide, Olivia. So I'm going to go through these quickly. So set out 10 main modifications to the design. So modifications from the design that was consulted on. I'm going to quickly run through these as a list, and then Livio is going to go through each one with a plan on the screen in more detail, and then we're going to discuss those 10 modifications. So the first one was just a relocation of the outbound bus stop near Westbrook Place. That was based on a specific response from local people, and in particular a person who lived nearby who requires the access to a driveway. The bus stop kind of impinged on that slightly, so we've re-looked at that and moved it to a different location. In terms of the question that we asked about the location of the crossing near Westbrook Place, we got kind of a mixed response on that, but we've taken, we've had a lot from the discussions. We decided that it is advantageous to put a crossing in that location, so the design team tried to do that, and you'll see that on the plan. A big point that was raised was regarding the Elizabeth Way roundabout and giving more space to cycling pedestrians around the edges of the roundabout, and we've addressed that as you'll see in the plan. We want to just discuss that in groups, because on one corner of the roundabout it does mean that we have reduced the width for traffic, so reduced the width from 2 lanes to 1 lane, so that obviously that may have a slight impact on traffic queuing, but we'll bring that up and raise it in detail when we discuss. We've got slight modifications to the inbound bus stop near Arby Road based on driveway access again. Slight modifications to Arby Road junction. In fact, there's a few options we're looking at, which Livia will explain in more detail. We've got addition of a signalised crossing near Downham's Lane, as that was kind of the preferred location regarding that question, the specific question we asked. Then we've had to slightly relocate the outbound bus stop in that area as well, because we found that it was near a building of local interest where we placed it previously, so we've addressed that issue. We've reworked the design for the area around Woodhead Drive, including an additional uncontrolled crossing, which you'll see on the plan and be able to feed back on. In doing that, we've lengthened the outbound bus lane and shortened the inbound bus lane slightly. We have a new design option for the junction at King's Hedges Road, which is similar to the design we put out for the Gilbert Road, Histon Road, so we kind of learned some lessons from that design. And finally, the last issue we want to discuss is the treatment of the outbound pavement between Asham Road and Ramsden Square. So previously we proposed it would be shared use. From all of the discussion we had from the consultation, we're kind of proposing a slightly different option for that, which Lydia will set out. So I'll hand over to you now, Lydia.
Okay, good evening everyone. For some of you might have seen me before because I attended the tree workshop, but my name is Livio Martelli, WSP. I'll be taking over the detail design stage, so I don't have the full history from this stage of design, but I'm collecting and gaining as much information as possible at the stage. So I want to go through all these items that Paul highlighted, but there will be changes that effectively are quite minor changes. They are as a result of the consultation. There's not too much really to discuss, it's just more a presentation. And there are some specific items I'd like to discuss with you in more detail. I'd like to get your views and ideas, and that's the reason why we're going to have a separate workshop afterwards. So I'll try to highlight the specific items we want your feedback on. So if we start from the first one, Westbrook Place. Right, so what we've done here, as Paul mentioned, we relocated the bus stop. So the bus stop was to the effectively to the south of Westbrook Place. We moved it to the north. From Paul mentioned the reason why we did it. There was some strong opposition in the previous location, but the advantage from an engineering point of view is, as you can see, is there are less accesses, so it's a better place for a bus stop. Then we have introduced a new signalized crossing that you can see there. This is also as a result of the consultation. The crossing is for pedestrians only because there's no really, unfortunately, there's no space here for a two-can crossing. And then, as you can see to the north, we've got, that's the area where all the shops are. And it's recognized as an area of potential conflicts between pedestrians and cyclists. Obviously, you're going to have quite a lot of pedestrians there. And as you can see, cyclists we have potentially other routes as well, because they could potentially use the bus lane, or the fast cyclists could use the road. So we want to provide a facility there for more vulnerable cyclists. So we've got a bus lane. There is going to, a cycle lane that's going to be at the same level as the footway, and it will be all in block paving, so it will be rather attractive. So,
could you tell us which colour is symbolising what? What's the red stripe?
so the red here is the cycle lane.
Right. And the brown is pedestrian?
The brown is pedestrian.
So what is the red line different to the pink line? What's the difference?
Well,
Pink line's bus.
Yeah, well, the red line, effectively, what we're gonna effectively want to create two potential routes for cyclists. So we're gonna have fast cyclists at this location. They could be using, if they want, they could use the bus lane, because obviously it's quite wide, and most of the times you don't get buses in it, obviously. And then you go more vulnerable cyclists at this location. They will be using the cycle lane. So this is a different material. So it's going to be block paving. So it's more attractive, more suitable to that location. So that's why it's a different colour.
What's the sort of scale? What kind of widths are we looking at in metres or whatever for these different lanes?
For the cycle lane also, it's about
It's 1.5 with local reduction to 1.2 at the finish points, where we have the bus stop.
And is the pavement for pedestrians the same width?
Now, this is kind of different areas. Difficult question.
Should we explain this when we get to the
The
table?
minimum weight is up to 2 meters for pedestrians. But there is the short frontage here which we cannot design on because doesn't belong to the council. It's the highway boundary limited.
Sorry, could the
We
gentleman
can't
speak
hear
up?
you.
We can't hear you at the back here. Can you throw your voice more, please?
So this cycle lane, it's on that same level what the footway is. We're using two different colors because that's going to be different material than, for example, here on the northern side. So we are going for block paving type material. The width of the cycle lane is 1.5 meter along this section, and we have half a meter buffer zone from the parking space. The pedestrians, they have as a minimum here 1.8 meter footway, but here is the much more space available, but we do not control this land. That's why we're showing this as a 2 meter section only at the moment.
So what I said is correct. So in this specific area, so coming down from the junction past the shops, we recognise, through our discussions, we recognise that this area has quite a lot of conflicts in it. You're going to have pedestrians who are trying to come from the shops, going to the parking spaces, people crossing the cycleway. So we can't put a fast cycleway through this area. We need to somehow try to calm the cycleway. So we're just trying to come up with ideas for this specific piece of cycleway here, where there's quite a lot of conflict, to try and calm it slightly, to make sure that we're not having cyclists riding down there at 20 miles an hour, for example. Which is a difficult thing to do, and it's kind of a result of switching the cycleway from the carriageway where we previously had it between the busway and parking, which is also not ideal. So this side, so we are achieving a cycleway which is separated from the road and is a facility for everyone to use, but we need it to be slightly calmer because we recognise that there are a number of conflict points in that area. So we need to move on. We can discuss this around the tables further. We'll be walking around the tables.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. It's Gilbert Road Junction. So the signalised crossing that we had has been moved, will be moved onto Westbrook Place. So effectively, this creates much more space within the junction for pedestrians and cyclists. So we can achieve a wider pavement on this side, which in the previous design was a pinch point, and we have dedicated space facilities for pedestrians and for cyclists, with dedicated crossing points for cyclists and pedestrians here. the conflict areas are for pedestrian cyclists wanting to turn left, so potential conflict area of pedestrians here. So we're considering some options here. So it'd be good to have your feedback on this. So one of them is a shared use. So having a small area of shared use for cyclists turning left. Obviously, the shared use, nobody likes it. But the alternative is having this approach here where pedestrians effectively need to cross the cycleway twice to get to the crossing. So it might be that in this situation, shared use is the best solution. But if you've got some ideas, please let us know. And for cyclists wanting to turn right on Gilbert Road, they will have to join the carriageway and use advanced stop lines. And similar cyclists coming down from Gilbert Road will be able to join the cycleway here. It's not shown on this drawing because they are still work in progress effectively. So here I can only see positive improvements. I don't think there's too much up for discussion, but obviously if you've got any questions we can discuss it later. Now, Elizabeth Way roundabout, what we've done, I mean, Paul said the main issue was trying to address conflicts between pedestrians and cyclists. So what we've done is we've removed the ability for two AGVs, for two lorries effectively, to use the roundabout at the same time alongside. So you won't have two lorries that be able to use the roundabout effectively at the same time. One going straight and one turning right, which is quite normal in Cambridge. So pretty much everywhere else in Cambridge, an AGV will have to use other lanes in order to turn right. So I don't think it's a major issue. We discussed it with the safety team and they accept this. So this effectively, by blocking these movements, by reducing, restricting these movements effectively, we created more space for pedestrians and cyclists because we could widen the pavements. Similarly, now we're looking at the option of removing the left turn facility from Milton Road going down to Elizabeth Way. So this effectively would remove the pinch point that we've got at this location and would allow us to have a segregated cycleway. So in the previous version of the design, we had shared use areas. So now effectively we removed all shared use area apart from this section. We'll be talking about this later. So we removed shared use areas, introduced segregated facilities, segregated crossings for pedestrians and cyclists. So now the downside of this is that we're going to get some small delays because obviously by removing the left turn facility we might get some traffic, we get some traffic delays, and we will discuss this with the signal team, and we will, and the rest of the team effectively will make a decision on what we want to do
Can I
with
just
this.
clarify? Are you saying that a vehicle coming west into town, coming down Milton Road,
Yeah.
will not be able to turn left down Elizabeth Way?
No, sorry. They will still be able to do all maneuvers,
Right.
but how we designed it before is that they could do the maneuver by staying on their lane.
Oh, I see.
Now they'll have to encroach onto another lane,
Yeah.
which happens everywhere
You still
in Cambridge.
can,
But they will be
still
able
go
to.
left.
They will still be able to do exactly the same things.
I was
they're doing
confused
now.
because there wasn't an arrow on that side.
No, we will allow the same maneuvers. They are allowed now.
It's just a one-lane approach to the roundabout instead of a two-lane approach.
Yes, and I said it just
Yeah.
isn't an arrow.
They're still working hard on this
Ah, I
design.
see.
So
Can you tell us also what the yellow cross hatching is for the left?
The yellow hatch.
Area of cross hatching, that.
Oh, no, that's just road markings.
Oh, is it?
No, it's.
There's no one.
No,
We've now got all down these avenues. Is the view that
Yes, I just think
bikes should come out Harding or Park Avenue or
Oh, it's
well, that's now a main cycle
Oh, because you've got
route
traffic.
now we've got the capture of the park.
So Sacre is coming from Highworth Avenue, going where?
Well, the thing is, if you go back to these avenues, there's now the cycle come down Albury Road, diverted through the new cycle path on the edge of Albury Park into Leeds Avenue. And then the bikes have got a choice as to where they go. They could come down here, off the roundabout, or they could come down to Park Avenue. Now, is there a view as to which is preferable, or do you not take a view on that? Because obviously they're going to be more than they currently are.
We discussed this in the workshop around tables.
Yeah.
We've got to move this through.
Yeah, because if we spend all our time talking here and it's not such a good acoustic, it's better if everybody is in small tables and then the officers can come around and answer any questions when we're in the small tables, then we get through the information more quickly.
Yeah, because
Okay.
it's important that we get a record of what people say. So
Yeah.
keep going.
Right. So Albury Road Junction, some minor changes here, nothing major. We've moved slightly the bus stops as Paul suggested, just a few meters. We rationalised the alignment of the cycleway. I think the only item there is for discussion here is the potential interactions between cyclists and pedestrians at the crossing point. So in this design, we are providing separate crossing facilities for pedestrians and cyclists. However, there is a risk that if it's green for both pedestrians and cyclists turning left might affect, there might be a conflict point between turning left and pedestrian crossings. So we are recognizing there is a potential issue there, and we're looking at various options. So one option could be to effectively have a no block effectively the left turn maneuver for cyclists, make it legal. So the cyclists could only go straight, and they could, in order to turn left, they'll have to use the advanced stop line. Alternatively, they could use a shared use here, or the second option is to introduce two-car crossings. So effectively it's a crossing for pedestrians and cyclists. So that way you eliminate the risk of cyclists turning left, which can effectively have a conflict with pedestrians. But
do you mean the scramble? Are you keeping the scramble?
Sorry, let's just allow him to keep going, because otherwise we're going to be here all night.
We'll
Sorry.
discuss this around the tables. In a
we'll
bit more
discuss it.
detail.
Yeah, we'll discuss it.
Please keep going.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right, on this, we're effectively introducing a new signalised crossing, as Paul mentioned, as Dunham's Lane. Some minor changes to the proposed floating bus stops, as Paul discussed. So no major changes other than what I just mentioned. So the new crossing at Downham Lane was the result of the consultation. And going down to Woodhead Drive, we are introducing a new uncontrolled crossing. You can see there is an existing uncontrolled crossing, and the proposed one is going to be a lot wider. And by doing this, we're trimming the bus lane, the inbound bus lane, and at the same time we're extending the outbound bus lane. This is to improve journey time for buses traveling outbound. All right, so let's move on. King's Edge Junctions, we got two options. This is the original design that you should all be familiar with, and the option 2 is effectively the Manchester style design, where we swap across the cycle crossing with the pedestrian crossing that you can see here. The benefit of this design is that for pedestrians, in order to cross, say diagonally, it doesn't need to cross the cycleways too many times, as opposed to the other design. So on here you have to cross the cycleways more times. But the downside of this design is that you increase the length of the crossing because the pedestrians are crossing the inside of the junction. And the last item for discussion is the shared use between Asham Road and Highworth Avenue. So there are a number of safety concerns in relation to shared use, and this is to do with the fact that cyclists are travelling quite close to the properties, and there are issues with visibilities, and also as you're coming out of a side roads of a junction, you don't expect cyclists coming from both directions. So there were some safety issues in relation to shared use. So we're now considering reducing the extent of the shared use. The previous design was going from Asham Road to Rantham Square. So now it's been reduced from Asham Road to the Elizabeth Way roundabout. This is the critical section because we are coming closer to the school, the Milton Road, primary school on Asham Road, and it's less critical from a safety point of view, and I think allows children to get to school. And for everyone else, there is a large wide facility on the opposite side of the road, so we don't see the need to have a extremely long shared use facility, which
Are
could
those
create
shared use
safety.
facilities, I'm sorry to interrupt just quickly because I don't understand it,
Yeah.
the brown and the red? that you showed
Sorry,
in the
I should
picture,
have said the blue one is the shared use facility.
So we retain an outbound cycle lane,
Yeah,
which is the pink,
Yeah.
and then the pavement inside between the cycle lane and the properties is approximately 3 metre wide shared use pavement.
and
So
is that the thing that looks greyish?
greyish blue.
So when right on the junction then, sorry to show ignorance, but what are the red things indicated? There seem to be like two red oblongs and a kind of brown oblong.
They are the Copenhagen style crossings.
Yeah, let this be
Right.
the last question. Please
Okay.
move on.
Yeah, I mean you can discuss. So this was the last slide. So now we can have this workshop, and we're going to split into different groups. We've got 6 copies of each of the full effectively design drawings. So we can split in 4 groups if you want, or up to 6 groups.
We have 5 groups. given
Five?
the number of people.
5 groups, that'd be fine. So it'd be good if you could try and focus, because obviously there are many things potentially for discussion, but as most of it is of this was a presentation of where we got to, an explanation of what we did to address the designs. Some elements are still need to be discussed and decided. So if I can get your view particularly on these 2 options for the King Sages junctions, because we haven't decided it yet. On your view on the shared use area as well, to Asham Road, it would be good to get your view as well on the type of crossings at the junctions where I discussed earlier, potential interactions between pedestrians and cyclists, and then now we can effectively start the discussion. We've got drawings, so you can write down on the actual drawings. And then we'll just take it and assess, and we'll come around and feel free to ask any questions. So if you can divide, to split in 4 groups.
Thank you for participating in the first part. We'll move on to landscaping now.
Just before you go to landscape, I was very impressed by the amount you've taken on board from the consultation. If you aren't careful, you'll get a reputation for listening.
Well, I haven't been listening to people as well, so hopefully you'll So this is Andy Cottons from WSP. He's the landscape designer in charge of putting together the landscape for both Diston Road and Milton Road. And as mentioned before, we've had some walks with residents, and he's been up and down Milton Road a few times. So I'm just going to let him take you through the presentation now, and then we'll break again. Let's stay in the same groups as we were last time, so that we can quickly organise ourselves onto the tables when we get to the workshop part. So,
okay, yeah. Just on that, we've got 4 copies of everything. So I'm not sure how many groups you were in last time, but we've only got 4 copies of all of that. So the first slide talks about the major intervention areas. These are areas where essentially there are opportunities for landscape public realm enhancement. The next slide is about the minor intervention areas. We're not covering these, but as part of the site walkover and as part of our designs, we are taking these into consideration, and there will be proposals on these, and we've taken on board comments that we've received regarding the minor intervention areas. There's a sort of third category of landscape areas, which is not part of this workshop, but we thought we'd just advise you that we are working with the arbory shop keepers and landowners, and subject to their buy-in, have produced a preliminary landscape design that will provide enhancements to that area and try and rationalise what's currently quite a broken up and disparate set of arrangements of all different shops. And the idea is that that will tie in seamlessly with the public realm design, so that there aren't any forgotten little spaces between cycleway, pedestrian, and the thresholds of the shops, for example. So that will all work as well. Coming on to the site-wide objectives, the avenue of trees along the entire length of Milton Road has been subject to considerable amount of previous consultation. The green boxes on all of these slides are the summary of what our understanding is of you as the stakeholder, what your preferences have been to date. So we're taking those on board, combine those with the latest engineering designs to come up with our proposals. And one of the things that we'll be particularly looking for your feedback on is the overall choice of species, and we've put the 2 groups of species based on where we're looking at closer to the city centre. There'll be one group of species, and then where the carriageway is wider, we've got a bit more room looking at larger species. That's the broad distinction between those 2. And hopefully those lists there will be familiar to you from those of you that have been in the previous workshops. We're hoping that will become a defining characteristic of Milton Road. And we're proposing that the colour scheme for the landscape materials will be warm dark tones and a matte finish. And that's partly because we've noticed that lighter tones can start to show signs of wear quite quickly. And that was one bit of feedback that I picked up along the way. We'd also like to introduce the concept of non-standard highlight surfaces, porous surfaces that can be used in particular areas where we're looking to enhance tree rooting zones. That could be trees that we're providing, or trees that are just outside the carriageway that will be affected by the construction work. Then that surface will be laid down over those to allow irrigation and aeration and promote the health of both existing and proposed trees. However, please be aware that those interventions are likely to be a small percentage of the total length of footway or cycleway along the entire route, and will be targeting specifically around trees that are potentially within a metre or 2 of the trees. We've isometric section to illustrate the kind of tree measures, tree protection measures that we think are appropriate. In this case, we're suggesting a product produced by a company called Green Blue Urban, which is a soil cell system which reduces the compaction of the soil and promotes health for tree roots, aeration of the tree roots, and also allows easier irrigation. And in that case there, you can see on that cross section at the bottom, we're showing how that could be laid under the cycleway and footway so that the rooting zone is not predominantly laterally along the green verge, because we feel that that might affect the overall stability of the tree if the roots are growing laterally and not allowed to spread as many directions as possible. The first intervention area, we took on board, this is what you said about a book theme, potentially providing some seating, and some of the other precedents that we looked at. We identified the importance of the scholar tree, Symphonicapos, I think is its Latin name. These trees are dotted around Cambridge, but this one particularly provides such a strong character already. The design that we've come up with seeks to enhance that rather than replacing that tree or planting other trees in proximity to it to allow the use of this tree. We've also considered potentially uplighting the tree and using certain treatments that might make that space a destination in its own right rather than two sides of the road that are segregated by a busy highway.
That's just an example of that. So, subject to discussion tonight, the crossing patterns examples or else.
Yeah, that's I think near the Tate Modern. So that was the landscape design for that, where we've come up with a way of unifying the space. The multicoloured crossing there shows the spine of some books with the theme of the scholars. We've come up with two options for this, and we're hoping that you will give one or the other, choice of two options. And the major change you'll see in the handout is this slight deviation in the cycle route to enhance this space here. So there's a segregated cycle route and a non-segregated option which runs straight through there. We're also hoping for your input into looking at where seating could be provided in this design, and potentially other bits of street furniture that could include locations for public art, cycle storage, and such like. Our proposals for the tree, the bed underneath the tree, this is a dwarf wall currently with some rather overgrown, scruffy looking shrubs on it, is to provide a hedge such as a hedge with very small leaves such as a yew, can be closely clipped and can be maintained at different heights, and that would potentially unify the space by being allowed to grow to the same height, so it would be a trick of the eye, because at this you've got a wall that is sort of need to something about that high, whereas at the other end it's just a really low wall, so the hedge could actually just become wide and high all the way through, and there would the advantage of that is potentially as well as to screen the ground underneath the tree. We don't know how well, if we were to propose that we're planting the future, how well it will grow because of shape. But if you did plant the hedge right around the edge, could be successful. And we're also suggesting that that area, the existing shrubs, are completely taken out, and that area is just grass below them. But we'd also suggest that underneath that hedge, we plant some non-vigorous ivy, perhaps some other little bits of ground cover, just to neaten the overall appearance and potentially colonise that space, that grass space there, so that we can identify which species are the most suitable for that area. If the grass doesn't take it, perhaps the ground cover and the ivies will at least cover over the bare soil. So improving the whole appearance of that area and also providing options, and we're hoping that you will rank these in order of preference. Concept 1 is very much a retention of the existing situation. There's a slight change in the size of the overall roundabout, and I think we've had to just about make out the previous beds of the annual plants that are placed there and the internal. So we've shrunk it down so that the geometry is quite formal and symmetrical. And the only change in concept 1 would be to restructure the shrub planting in the middle of the roundabout in consultation with arboriculture and ecology teams to make sure that that has the best value in both those areas. And that may be as simple as just thinning out a few specimens or working out whether what the life expectancy is of that shrub planting in there. Because we haven't been in there, we don't know what we've got. We know that it's got biodiversity value, and that's feedback that you've given. Concept 2 is quite a radical redesign where we're taking out that shrub bed and planting some multi-stemmed trees in its place, and providing wildflower grassland across the roundabout, apart from a strip of mown grass right around the edge. And that would have biodiversity benefits as well as reducing the maintenance burden of the annual growing plants and the grass mowing.
Medgate, I think, probably paid for the original support. That's one of the ones. Medgate, the firm which is up south.
Yeah.
So the city council doesn't think. So this is why I wanted them to be involved in this discussion.
Right. Thank you. Concept 3 is a variation of the current geometry. The difference being that we would provide wildflower grassland instead of mown grassland, instead of annual bedding plots. We are proposing a more biodiverse mixture of shrubs and grasses, and that would be for year-round interest as well, so amenity value as well as biodiversity value. And then concept 4 is providing a transition from the informal shrubs that are currently in the centre, using a ring of wildflower grassland around those, and then giving way to what the current situation is with the annual beds and the mown grass. So that's a mixture of all the other 3 concepts.
If people didn't hear, what Dorcas said is that there's an organisation called Redgate that sponsors the flowering plants on the roundabout. So she believes they take care of the maintenance, and they do come at regular intervals and replant and so forth. So the proposition is that that the designers should be in contact with Redgate so that they're taken into account in terms of whatever happens for the planting around the roundabout.
The proposals for the King's Hedges crossroads are to plant some large, or even very large species of trees that could provide a really interesting, magnificent setting for the lovely architecture there, and the same pattern could be reproduced all 4 corners of the roundabout, and we're looking for you to choose species there from the list that you've seen on the previous slide. All these slides will be distributed, so you'll have all of these slides, and we've taken on board the previous comments about potentially having tulip trees there. So we're asking you to think about whether those 2 trees should perhaps be the same species, different, which combinations thereof. Woodhead Drive, we've come up with a layout. Again, we've taken the engineering design, and our role primarily is to look at what species are most appropriate and how those verges will be treated. So in this case, we're suggesting that the 2 long verges up Woodhead Drive itself are effectively planted into swales. So they'll have a dish profile and can potentially take some surface water for irrigation and cleaning of improving the quality of the water that goes into the drainage system through infiltration. We've quite a formal avenue of trees, and we're seeking your choice as to whether on this side of the road, so the south side of the road, that smaller species might be, whether you think that smaller, more ornamental species might be more appropriate to provide a better setting for the small scale planting that we see outside of those flats currently. It could be quite an abrupt transition to a more formal avenue with some more upright, larger specimens, and that is the choice that we're suggesting there. What we're also proposing here is that on this side here, the existing quite overgrown woodland area is treated rather like a local nature reserve, and that's to enhance the biodiversity rather than public access. We're not going to be encouraging public access into there, so some structural planting, if necessary, or thinning out, and minimal intervention there. So generally tidying up and taking on all the comments. I think there were concerns that could potentially promote antisocial behaviour in there, because it could be seen as an area that people can get to where they're not seen. So it might be better there if we maintain clear stems around some of those trees rather than a massive thicket planting. And that's the plan for that area. And that brings us to the final area, which is quite a simple exercise where you can choose for the parking in front of the shops at Mitchell's Corner, whether the current design has it's got three build-out areas, green verge areas, whether we should maximise the number of trees that are planted there, or on balance choose to have more parking and less trees. So as a summary, and I'll leave this slide up, you also have it printed out. Your 6 tasks are on the board. Yes?
What sort of size were these trees whenever they were planted?
What size of stock will we be planting?
Yeah.
And normally, what we try and do, so throughout the city, we try and get containerised stocks if we can.
Right.
And they are normally between 3 and 5 metres tall. And then we look at stem diameters, which is taken at a measurement of 1 metre high. And then we kind of go 10 to 12 centimetres. And then we go, yeah, that's it, at 1 metre. And then sometimes we go 12 to 14. So probably...
So they're going to be a reasonable size that'll have all
yeah,
the coverage.
they have to be really, yeah, absolutely.
Because they have been planting little trees up
Kenny,
around Milton Road for years.
can you
and they
confirm
just
that none of the Telliers are the dripping variety?
Yes, that's right. So what we've got, especially one of them, is it the Tomin Toast? I think we've got, isn't it? The good thing about, apparently, the aphids don't like furry underside leaves. And the Tomentosa has a furry underside leaf, so you don't get honeydew. The other thing about Tomentosa is they are really good in high temperatures because they flip their leaves over and show a silvery underside. So when the wind blows on a hot summer's day, you get this flash of silvers as they go. So, and they're a very robust, tough urban tree that take all sorts of horrible things that we do as we're driving our vehicles past.
Can I just ask about the tree canopies? And I don't know the species individually, but are they all going to have really big canopies so they don't get hit by vehicles and things? So in our road, branches have to be lopped off from mature trees, which are very nice, but they also need some management.
Yeah, sure. So the City Council basically goes around the city every 3 years, our 30-odd thousand trees, and that's one of the things that we do. We basically try and grow the trees to have that canopy level above the road heights. It doesn't always happen that way because sometimes we make mistakes and we get carried away with a lovely tree, and it is a real problem, and that's happened way before I've come here, but we try and hold on to them as long as possible. And we've got some lovely pear trees down St Philip's Road in Mill Road, and they grow pears that are the size of pumpkins, and they drop and dent people's cars. So we're gradually phasing those out as we go along. So we've learned a lot over the years, and certainly tree officers prior to us. So the selection, I know a lot of you guys are quite anxious about the cherries and why we've chosen cherries and this, that and the other. The reason with there's been a bunch of tree officers and a bunch of landscape officers literally sat at a table arguing about suitability of species in the urban environment and Milton Road environment. So that's a really long answer to yes, we have definitely looked at shape of trees, fruitful, honeydew, drought situations, reflective heat, and also in some cases how, though this is still ongoing and this might be a problem in the future, with climate change or more weather patterns that we're seeing, is some trees are better in high-powered wind situations and actually help to reduce wind speeds in urban areas. So yeah, there's a lot. It's the selection that we kind of boiled it down to was kind of from arguing a lot at the table to what we've learned and what we've done wrong, and so yeah.
Okay, so can we split into 4 groups this time? Maybe around some of the big round tables we were before. I just want to say thanks to everyone for coming. I hope that it was as useful for you as it will be for us, I'm sure. We've got all of the comments. I've been circulating around the tables during that last part about landscaping. I think there was some good discussions going on. And I've also spoken to some of my colleagues and project engineers that said they've gathered some good ideas from the first part of the workshop. So thank you for coming and contributing to this workshop, and I hope that you're pleased with the way that Milton Road is developing. And hopefully we'll get a really good scheme at the end of this.
Email further comments what email address?
You can email me at my my name. I'll write it down for you.
Give us the time, forget about half term. When you're going to publish and when is it going to...
So we publish the assembly is on the 26th, I think, just after that. So if we want to have an LLF between publication and the assembly, after the week. If people are happy to have the LLF after the assembly, previously that was not the case, then we delay until after the return.
Chair of the LLF, can we please have an LLF in time for you to get the feel of it so you can talk to the assembly, which means in half term. It's unfortunate, but...
Unfortunately, and it would be the 18th, which is the Monday, because it was the only day that we could get they could organise the room.
The only day it is,
Yeah.
but even before, goes to any of the committees.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.